Good morning, folks. This is Talking Point here on WASN, your content capsule show. Michael Small here once again before you. Without my co-host, or am I? Now, we have quite a bit to get into, a lot of stories that I do want to hit, at least, to a small degree, just to mention them. Some continuations of stories going on. Of course, the jury received instructions with regards to the Moruga triple homicide. We won't necessarily go into that, although I think it's good for the public to stay abreast of stories with significance like that. But for more on what we have in store today, let's kick off the Daily Review. Top story I wanted to talk about today, the situation in Venezuela and Guyana has now caused a comment from MP David Lee of the UNC, and he's basically questioning the government's continued involvement with Venezuela while the threat of something happening hangs over the head of everyone in the region. And he's basically saying wait until after the referendum to then continue moving forward with the deal. He's basically taking the stance of if CARICOM is de facto our ally, because I don't know if to what extent CARICOM includes military treaties and mutual defense. That was not necessarily a concern within the region, at least the last half a century between the 1950s to the 2000s and maybe beyond, maybe to the 2000s, 2010s, etc., etc. But now we've reached the point where Venezuela has made some statements, and aggressive statements, and of course the question is, do you think it's bluster? Do you want to take that chance? So opposition MP David Lee is basically saying, should we be assessing and even waiting to see the outcome and subsequent action after the Venezuelan referendum on December the 3rd? And I understand the point that he's taking. I do wonder, however, if he would be saying the same thing, if he would be standing on this principle, if he was part of government on the majority side and not on the opposition bench. Now, to be fair, I also wonder if the PNM was in opposition, they would be saying the same thing, right? It's easy to be principled when you're in the opposition because you don't actually have to make the decision. You don't actually have to bear with the consequences if either the decision is unpopular, whether it's right or wrong. One of the travesties of our political environments is the fact that, look, the NAR potentially made the right decisions, or made more right decisions than wrong decisions, and to some extent went with, the IMF, you might say, or whatever, but to some extent helped the country avert long-term disaster, at least for a little while. And they got voted out the very next general election. After 33-3, of course, one can make the case of the Senate still, holding up the situation. Fine, okay. But the Senate with the independent senators, and then you have to ask, how often are the independent senators always? But we'll see. So it's easy to be principled. Because if you do the unpopular thing in government, you could be voted out. But then also, you're never 100% sure of anything. The government, at the end of the day, was trying to get this dragon gas deal through. I don't know if they expected or had any reasonable expectations that the situation between Venezuela and Guyana will ramp up to the extent that it was when sanctions were more or less very recently lifted from the United States. So I understand the MPs' concerns. Then there's also the fact I've used the parallel with Russia and Europe. While Europe is sending aid to Ukraine, they're still buying Russian gas. And the key point is they're still dependent. And the MP brings up the point about being dependent on Venezuela, on a Maduro regime, for all intents and purposes. This is not like a Western democracy where, I mean, at the end of the day, we saw it. Trump got a term, then he was voted out, Biden got a term. Now, of course, with the two of them being potentially frontrunners, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But if there was a viable alternative, Biden might have been voted out already. So the regimes, do not persist. It's a different situation than with Russia or Venezuela, where the head of state more or less is prevented from being challenged, or challengers are prevented from challenging effectively. And it's not just the Venezuelan government, but the man himself and doing deals with him. To what extent are we confident with that? That's a legitimate concern. But I think at the end of the day, however, there are practical realities that we are on this course. And Talking Point has been one of the shows where we've spoken about diversification. We have lamented being tied too closely, so closely, and solely to oil and gas. Still, even with all of the lip service paid to diversification, it seems as though no actual effort, and the airport in Tobago by itself is not a plan for tourism. And food security, agriculture, all of those things are also taking a back seat. No actual effort for diversification away from energy or petrochemical manufacturing. And at the end of the day, I have already stated I don't like it. My colleagues have stated they don't like it. But we are on this course and we recognize it. And we can't just say, well, told you so, and then want to deny reality. And the reality is we need this deal, or an alternative, which doesn't seem to be forthcoming. Maybe the Prime Minister was working on an alternative, but it doesn't seem to be forthcoming. So the unique conditions for the Dragon deal only potentially exist with two other neighboring countries, and it would be less desirable in many ways. So it's a rock and a hard place, as we said yesterday. I understand, but I do think to some extent now, if the opposition MP was in government and was part of decision-making, the roles would be reversed and the statements would be reversed. Next story. Moving on now, sticking with the UNC, an article in today's papers basically presented some of the opinions of various political analysts with regards to why the UNC is looking to get nominations for candidates for the general election, which will be coming up technically in 2025. So it's not actually 2 years from now, but it's more than a year away. Why are they moving so fast? There are two reasons, I believe, that are mainly presented by 3 or 4 different analysts. One of them is some think this might be the opposition leader trying to show up weakness or perception of weakness, trying to push against that within her party, or trying to weed out less politically reliable elements. Let's put it that way. Which would be interesting. I'm not entirely sure if I'm sold with the fact that there's dissent within UNC enough so to remove her, although the way how an internal party election is, one could argue it could be manipulated enough to keep someone in power, right? Now, the other thing that was presented was the fact that in the past, and I would even argue with the most recent internal government election that just happened a few months ago, the UNC was caught with their pants down, even though they knew that election was coming. I felt as though they took the matter to court, and it was almost as though they did not plan for the eventuality that they would win, and that the government would have to call, and the government didn't call the election, the local government election right away. They called the election kind of at the edge of the limit of the window, if my memory serves correct. And it seemed as though the UNC were just as unprepared as the PNM. Now, in the PNM's case, in the government's case, I can understand that they feel they're going to win, or they hope they want to win, or it might be a bit negligent not planning for the eventuality that you lose. But in UNC's case, you're not planning for the eventuality that you win. And because of that, well, sorry, I think that that local government election is an example of this phenomenon. That wasn't necessarily pointed out. The analyst, Dr. Bishnu Raghunath, is pointing to the 2015 general election, where he's saying they were still looking to get candidates, one candidate for Tunapuna 3 months before the general is when they decide to settle on them. And they don't want to be caught with their pants down again. I mean, it's kind of hard to rally the voting base, you know. When you're waiting on a candidate 3 months in, that might be a little bit last minute. It might be a little bit last minute, right? I think our politics is too short-term, and that includes how we view third parties, right? How third parties view the road that they have to travel, but also to some extent, our election campaign cycle. It's a lot of trucks and a lot of political meetings and a lot of bluster right at the end. But what about laying the foundation? So to some extent, I can appreciate this theory, and if this is the motivation behind calling for nominations, now I could appreciate that. Lay the foundation. Of course, they're still gonna more or less comment on everything and throw the kitchen sink at criticisms towards the government, hoping something sticks without actually being strategic in what they say and crafting an overall message, right? It's funny, the budget seems to have no vision. The criticisms of the opposition seems to have just as little structure. However, the cynic in me right now has a hard time discounting the thought process that, hey, maybe Kamala's position is weak. She's lost 2 general elections. By all rights, she should not be opposition leader. Who should replace her? I have people who I would like to see. I don't know if people would agree with me or not. I don't want to say I don't want to get anybody in hot water. But that's the fact of the matter. She's lost 2 general elections. Why is she still there? How would she be viewed by the voting public as a viable candidate when her counterpart has mentioned retirement several times? I don't know. And I do think that, generally speaking, that sort of negative motivating factor, wanting to prevent a problem, tends to be what causes politicians to move, as opposed to trying to do things better. Being more effective and more efficient, that doesn't tend to get the attention of many politicians. The results are more or less all over the newspapers for the last, I don't know how many decades. Okay, moving on to the next story. A security consultant, former member of the Coast Guard, I believe, Garen Heaver, he has made a call for the police to change their approach. And I believe he's pointing to what happened last week, where there were 18 arrests and 11 were set free and 7 were charged for loitering, which means that, as far as I'm aware, the whole point of that exercise, to go after gang members, to try to stem the violence, loitering charges for not even half ain't enough. And he points to that. He says the shift of the narrative is that these alleged gangsters can say, you arrested me, but I'm free now. The narrative has to be changed. It has to be commanded. It has to be controlled by the police service. Is that we know who you are and we're going to stay on top of you and be in your face. And he goes on to say, let's try and review how we do business and try an in-your-face sort of approach to make life uncomfortable for the criminals. Well, it's an interesting sentiment. It's an interesting sentiment. I don't know to what extent it's going to work, though. Because if you're too light, if you're too soft, if you're too ineffective, I've already made the case that these individuals, they expect to die, many of them. You know, frustrating them will only go so far to be a detriment. Now, if you could do it in a way that literally you make it impossible for them to conduct their criminal activities, because we're always watching you, because we always have a presence around, we're monitoring you, But to some extent, if it was so easy, I'm pretty sure that would be done the world over. It's not always so easy, right? It takes a lot of resources to be on top of any individual criminal, much less all of them. And then what might end up happening is, okay, you're monitoring a group, maybe the ones at war now. It might suppress them, but give room for other gangs to spring up and start their own wars. Then what you're going to do? You're going to switch your focus, and then we still have the original problem. Who, again, if you can't give them some actual consequences for their actions, if all you're going to do is be in their face, you're not really going to dissuade them too much. You might slow it down. But this is an immediate measure that might help suppress the problem immediately so that short-term, medium-term, long-term solutions would have more time to come online without the situation being out under control. Now, this leads me to the next story, because if it's not effective, if it's too soft, yeah, it really will just, it might not even suppress the violence and the crime. It might barely interrupt it. But there's a flip side. And that's with, to some extent, I'm sorry, I mixed up the stories. To some extent, this is the flip side. The PCA has reported that there have been an increase in police complaints or complaints against police officers. Now, the headline of the story say a sharp rise. The period being analyzed, I believe, is 2015 to 2021. So it's not necessarily we've seen a sharp rise from last year to this year. Comparing 2015 numbers to 2014 to 15, the year of, compared to the year of 2021 to 2022, complaints have more than doubled, it seems. Going from 252 complaints to 569 complaints. And these include allegations that require discipline, so neglect of duty, unlawful exercise of authority, discreditable conduct. So these are a lot of like the customer service things and more technically HR situations than the other common criminal offense allegations, which includes assault and murder. You could be in the face of gangsters, and this is not me defending criminals, but unless you could charge somebody with something, they have rights, whether we like it or not. And those rights cannot be trampled upon for no reason. You could deny someone their right to live their life and freely and privately by arresting them and putting them in jail if you have enough evidence to arrest them, to charge them, to take them to trial, and to get a guilty verdict eventually, in the long run, if you want long-term imprisonment. And police trying to be in their face could lead to overzealous policing. Let's put it that way. Let's not even necessarily go to the point of extrajudicial killing. There's also that potential as well, as you get two sides who are capable of violence. Tensions might be high. Who knows what will happen? One of the things is, if you push criminals into a corner, they oftentimes in TNT will shoot back, open fire. It might not necessarily solve the issue. It might just kind of shift it. And then, of course, there's always the risk of they misidentify the perpetrator, they take things too far. So there's a double-edged sword of wanting to do in-your-face policing. Granted, I get it. The police should know a significant number of who the gang members are, the majority are. They're probably not going to get that wrong. But if they can't prove that they're in the gang and they're doing illegal things, a judge is not going to look kindly to behavior if it goes past a certain point. and trying to stay in between those margins, not being effective, being too soft, and going too far, it could be a hell of a thing to ask our police officers to do. I don't know, maybe we should have better investigations in order to get proper evidence that we could then use to charge and convict gang members who are involved in murder and protection rackets, drug smuggling and distribution, etc., human trafficking. I don't know, apparently the best we could do is loitering. The best we could do. All right, last story, just I mentioned, the last story. The Chaguanas Business Chamber has lamented the fact that, in their view, there are too many people, I believe, in their area becoming victims because of social media transactions. And the reason why I want to point this out, you know, it might seem like a very obvious topic. It's just that it's a topic that the media ambassador to Talking Point, ASP Ashraf Ali, he has had multiple episodes coming on this show warning people about this issue. I understand that maybe due to the pandemic, people want to try to get the new thing, find the deals, get something used, a little bit cheaper, etc. And there are a lot of legitimate sales on social media. It's not to say that it's all going to be fake, but you can't take it for granted that it's not going to happen to you and just kind of go brave without being aware of what's going on, without having a certain degree of confidence that this is not phony. One of the things to help with that is to have the transactions done in front of a police station. Although, being in front of a police station, given recent events, that, you know, I understand if you might question that. But then there are certain obvious things of what not to do. Do not meet in some side street where there's nobody. Do not meet in a crime hotspot. I mean, at least don't do those obvious things, right? But don't take it for granted. It can happen to you. And I think this has helped perpetuate concerns with the Chaguanas area with regards to their crime situation. And it's causing the perception of the public to not be in line with what they're being told about crime being reduced in their area. And I understand that. To some extent, though, we have to try and protect ourselves. And if we don't put enough things in place to try to safeguard ourselves and don't take it for granted, it's fine. It's fine. Nah. Don't do it. Don't do it. This is not the old-time days. And people don't necessarily ascribe to the old-time ways. New technology, but also a new level of criminality in the country. And until we sort it out, that's just what we have to live with, and we have to be careful with what we do. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the conversation continues on Talking Point on WSN, your content capital. We'll be right back.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movie Town, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Well, folks, we have to change the hashtag. The hashtag is here. I'm speaking, of course, of the one and only Mr. Kizasha.
Good morning, sure, and good morning to all viewers. You give me such grand openings. I don't deserve it, but thanks nevertheless.
I mean, it's fun. No. I mean, listen, we have to try to have some sort of fun when dealing with things like our crime situation and our potential economic, I don't want to say disaster, but I mean, the rate we go in, it's not impossible for it to be disaster. But let's stick to the crime, though. Let's stick to the crime, because I don't think we were able to speak about this, you and I, on air before. So I want to talk, because we've been having this ongoing talk now with regards to the crime talks. It was something, well, Kamala says she asked for this early on in the year, which I believe I vaguely remember. And then, of course, most notably at the opening of Parliament, the President made some remarks. It would be interesting, you know, one of the questions I have is, did she do that on her own and kind of force the government to maybe publicly consider it? Or was this part of the government's overall plan and she was just a part of it to introduce the whole thing? We have crime talks. Both sides seem to agree, okay, let's do this. And now before they could even have the talks, they're quibbling over the terms of the talks. And the quibbling has not ceased. Both sides, they have reasons. And out of context, it's not unreasonable. But I find that at the end of the day, if you really wanted crime talks to happen, if you wanted bilateral coming together of both sides of Parliament, I don't think these reasons are good enough to stall talks.
Shouldn't that be stalled crime talks? Because we're not advocating for the crime talks to be just. We're not saying that they need.
Okay,
to
I have it as stalled. I have it as stalled. I don't know how it ended up as stalled.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, because the reason why I'm saying is that we not on this program advocating for it to be further delayed than it already has been. I hope that the government and the opposition can come together and have such conversations. The reason given by the opposition for their delay is, that's my response to it. Do I expect anything different from the opposition? You have to understand that at times the opposition are full of hot air. Very much full of hot air. They're actually getting the opportunity to sit down. The government is suggesting that they are willing to sit down and have conversations. A list of individuals who would be representing the government, including whom I think are the more important individuals in the matter, that is the Minister of National Security, whom I have my reservations about as Minister of National Security.
But he is.
But he is still the Minister of National Security, as well as the Attorney General. They were set to be a part of such talks. And if I'm not mistaken as well, the individual whom at times you wonder if really is the real individual behind everything, the man behind all operations, and Stuart Young was also supposed to be a part of that. And the opposition has taken this position that we're delaying the talks because the Prime Minister cannot make himself a part of it for whatever reason. At least that is what I understand. At least that is what Dr. Kipmew mentioned to you as well.
Yes, so they're waiting on the Prime Minister's response. And out of context, that might be reasonable in other circumstances. But in this one, it kind of makes no sense. They're also saying, look, how come you have 5 and we have 4? And again, out of context in a different situation, that might be very viable. You might be saying, well, look, they're looking to have an advantage. They're dictating
Listen,
terms.
as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter if the government has 5 and the opposition has 4.
Yeah, because the Prime Minister pointed out, this is not a voting thing.
The mere fact is they're getting to sit at a round table. And plus, also, the opposition may have ideas and may actually work to benefit TNT. The opposition might come forward with actual practical solutions that could be effective. But what the opposition is doing in this case is showing that we have absolutely no clue either. What we've done is that we've had our public relations aspect, and all right, we're the opposition, we're saying let's have crime talks because crime is completely out of hand. When it comes to the actual action of it, the opposition have no clue. Now, who is the opposition going to put as part of such conversations? It can't be the opposition leader. It really can't be heard. You know, all respects as a former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago between 2010 and 2015, but that's it. Kamla Persad-Bissessar doesn't have much to offer again as a political leader. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner. I'm just saying on the context of we've seen how the trends have been over the last couple of years with her as the leader, as the opposition. Then in the opposition itself, they have shadow ministers, which is good. It's good that you have shadow ministers. I think that's excellent, that's effective. But then sometimes you hear about 5 different shadow ministers of health. So who's the real shadow minister of national security? Because at one point I think it was 2 individuals. Whom is the real shadow shadow attorney general? Again, it gets conflicted at times. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but maybe the opposition themselves don't know who are the best individuals to send to that table either. Maybe they themselves aren't so sure. The opposition needs to understand that the mere fact that the government has agreed to have such conversations, and have basically said, we're putting forward these individuals, and we are welcoming you to the table, by the opposition themselves criticizing the government for the crime rates, and for crime being completely out of control. And let's admit it, it is. What it's doing now, what is happening now, as far as I can see, is that the public relations campaign is backfiring on the UNC. It actually helps the government. How does it help the government? It's not necessarily helping with crime fighting or crime skills, but if the government gets on a political platform and tells their followers and tells their supporters, we want to help with the crime situation, we're working and we're doing our best to fight in the fight against crime. But guess what? The opposition, look at what they've done. The opposition don't want to be a part of it. The opposition don't want to help. The opposition don't care. The government could actually be very much accurate in what they're suggesting. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say or agree with the Prime Minister that the opposition are happy with the crime numbers. From a political aspect, the opposition might say, if crime keeps going up, it's only going to make the government look bad. But I don't think anybody in Trinidad who's sane, anybody who's sane and has their smarts about them, will be happy with the numbers and the figures.
Well, that leads me to a question, but I'll save that question before. I wanted to add to what you were saying or agree with you. Yes, technically the government was the last source of any sort of movement towards getting the crime talks came from the government. They had their list of names and they set a deadline. And I think the problem is, and again, it's out of context. In other situations, this might be an insult. The Prime Minister not going to be there. Why not going to be there? Who put the AG in charge? How the AG put in a deadline? But these insults are minor. And my thing was, yes, you might be viewed to be in a disadvantaged position if you accept these sorts of things. But the importance of the talks supersede that. And then you can say, well, look, we went in a scenario that we didn't necessarily like the setup. We could publicly say we don't like the setup, but that doesn't mean that we're going to now not move forward, right? Let's push ahead anyway. Make our position clear. We don't like this. We don't like how this looks. We don't like what this might mean. Because their concerns might very well be, okay, the government might be off to a bad foot already, and it might lead to the eventual breakdown of the talks. But let the government be at fault. Give them the space to make the mistake. The UNC, I think you're right. At the end of the day, by not putting up any names, by basically being where the process stopped with them. The government put out their names and said, who are you going to send? And they haven't responded to that. The process technically stopped with them. And I don't think it's good enough. I think your idea that the government being quite happy letting the UNC kind of flounder. And one could even argue maybe that strategically they did it this way. They kind of said, okay, we're going to put the AG to chair the meeting. The AG is not necessarily going to participate in the talks, but he's but they do these things to kind of give the opposition a little bit of disrespect, just a little bit, so that it triggers them to blow it up out of proportion.
The thing is that the government has already been given room to fail when it comes to crime, and the government has proven that they failed with crime. Right?
Okay.
There's no ifs or buts about it. The Minister of National Security could come on the station on this platform this morning, and he's very good at it. He has the gift of the gab. All credit to him in regards to that. But they've failed because it shows for itself what is taking place here in TNT. They've failed. So there's no more room for failure. It's just a continuous downfall. You see, at what point do we say we've hit the bottom of the barrel? That's the thing. So there's no room for that at all. Now, in regard to looking at it from all sides and all aspects, I've been very critical of the opposition. And the simple reason being is that an effective opposition, or an opposition that can be critical in the sense that it's constructive, rather than public relations, can truly help in terms of governance. But I'm not seeing that, and that's what frustrates me. So as far as I'm concerned, the government is allowed to get away with certain things. But if I'm looking at it from all aspects as well, the other side of the argument that we should acknowledge is that the Prime Minister is the head of the National Security Council.
Yes.
Bear that in mind.
Yes.
2, I, myself, on this platform, have said previously that the Prime Minister has used the umbrella or the title of being head of the National Security Council conveniently. He has done that previously. Does it make sense for him to be a part of the conversation? It would make sense in terms of, yes, there's no harm at all. It would be only a benefit as far as I can see if the Prime Minister is part of the conversation. Does he really have to be a part of the conversation? Is it essential or necessary? No, it's not. So the opposition using that as their way of stalling, it just tells me, I think, that they're incapable. So, yes, understand that he is the head of the National Security Council. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's saying that that is not the case. I still don't necessarily see it as being completely necessary for him to be a part of the conversation. The second thing is, if I'm looking at it all around, is, would anything have come out from these talks anyway? Would anything have come out from these conversations? Would TNT have gained anything following such conversations? Or would it have been a part where, just as in Parliament, the opposition might have walked out of such talks, and the cabinet might come forward and say, listen, we've tried our best and it just seems as though that we can't work on it. Or 2, they're going to come out, all parties, and say, I think the conversations went well. Yes, certainly we've gained a lot of information and we've shared a lot of information and all thoughts were put forward and we've come together and we've found certain agreements, but then nothing happens. You never know. You never know whether or not it'll be beneficial. But if I was to take a look at how governments and opposition have worked previously, I'm not going to be very, very positive about it.
The thing is, and I get it, with high-level talks like this, you don't necessarily have to start out with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. They have to be included at some point, though. Right? At some point, they will need to be included, one would think. And I think, I understand the Prime Minister's argument that, look, on a practical level, his itinerary, his travel schedule, and we've seen it, he's been out of the country quite a bit recently already.
Well, it's probably safer out of the country than in the country.
That too. Don't mind the fact that he went to meet with one state whose, Crown Prince is allegedly involved in the murder of a journalist. But that's fine, innocent until proven guilty, whether we like it or not. But the point of the matter is, you're right, it's not necessary that he be a part of it, but like you, he has used the head of the National Security Council hat that he wears as an excuse to be involved in the Police Service Commission situation and the withdrawal of the meritless situation and the report from Stanley John,
And that's his biggest downfall. That's his biggest downfall. And you now see that argument arising out of this situation. But you know who's the individual that is really benefiting the most from this? It's Fitzgerald Hines. Fitzgerald Hines
yes, no longer on him.
Fitzgerald Hines is benefiting the most from this because, yes, you're right, it's no longer absolutely him being the focal point of this situation.
Yes.
Because all it's done is that, oh my goodness, the delay in these conversations, the delay in these talks have now taken over the real and serious issue of crime and criminal activity in Trinidad. You realize that given all that we've learned in the last 2 weeks, the individual who has been the most silent is Fitzgerald Hines. Have we heard from the Minister of National Security? I heard more from the Commissioner of Police, who made statements for the first time I could recall I actually agree with.
You mean Friday? Which statements was
that? In regards to better parenting.
I could agree with it, except the detection rate has nothing to do with parenting.
No, hold on.
So
I understand that. I understand detection goes into prevention, but at times parenting goes into prevention as well.
I know. I just find the problem is the context of who said it, unfortunately,
Listen, however you'd like to interpret it, fine, fair enough, everybody's
right, but the content...
But overall...
Yes, the content.
I actually agree with the comments from the Commissioner of Police, but this is what I'm saying. The individual who has benefited the most from this is the Minister of National Security.
The thing is, I think with regards to cooperation, because just this week, there was a photo with the Chief Secretary of the THA and the Minister of Trade and Industry, shaking hands and having smiles. And we know, of course, that it's not, in private, the relationship between politicians is not quite like what we see in Parliament or when they have arguments playing out in the press. But I found it interesting that, okay, here he is being willing to be seen in a jovial moment working with somebody from one, central government, aka Trinidad, right? And two, from the PNM, aka the party that's in opposition to him directly. The thing is, what I feel is the case is that the government was more than willing to work with anybody. Once you do not bring up or cause the need to change the budget. When it comes to the money, I think the government wants to control that and do it, whatever, because they have a plan for cost control, whether we agree with it or not, right? I think once it's relatively budget neutral or not too heavy on changes on the budget, they're probably open to all sorts of consultations. But in some cases, however, you can't get around the need. I'm saying we need to spend money here, and the government's like, now our budget is our budget, take it or leave it. Now, with regards to national security, I think this is why the government was saying we want to look at legislative things. And that's why they wanted the meeting to be limited to parliamentarians. Of course, it helps avoid the Gary Griffith issue, because I don't think the Prime Minister could politically be seen, or the PNM could be politically seen with Gary Griffith in crime talks,
why
regardless.
Not?
Because the government's position is basically saying he's guilty of something. I can't tell you what it is because of a lawsuit. I can't go into details, but he's guilty of something. He's done something wrong. So you can't say, we're going to talk about fighting crime with somebody who we are implying accusations against.
And and by the way, bear in mind, okay, fine, fair enough. But
I don't know if it's right, but they've put themselves in this political position.
He still ran in an election. Mm-hmm. He's still the political leader of a party. Mm-hmm. And if anybody was smart enough, they'd also remember the cases or the instances of Marlene McDonald, right? And what happened there. So,
exactly.
So it's not a matter of trying to raise issues from the past, but it's a matter of saying, let's not be hypocrites in this entire situation, in this matter. But I think overall, the opposition needs to understand the actual power or influence that they can wield here. They need to understand the opportunity being in opposition, what they have here. And I also am of the great belief that people in Trinidad and Tobago need to stop fooling themselves by being blinded by political affiliation. I cannot, in any right mind, say that I agree with the opposition in this instance. And I can also see that whilst the Prime Minister is the head of the National Security Council, a title and a hat of which he has worn many a times conveniently, again, the government has failed tremendously on crime. The government has overseen an increase in the murder rate, in gun violence, in crime as a whole. They've overseen that. They've
type of gun violence
They failed in this. I don't see him having to be part of the conversations because it could be reported back to him. And I'm pretty sure everything that happens is, well, most things at least, is reported back to him. So I'm just saying that the opposition has all the power and the influence here. Stop taking away what is happening in TNT, the reality of the situation, and letting it be clouded by this tit for tat of the opposition versus the government and the government versus the opposition.
I told Karen this yesterday on air, where I think a lot of people, they have ambitions for high office without understanding what that means. And it's not just the Prime Minister, it's also things like the opposition leader, even the Commissioner of Police. Now, the example yesterday was the fact that when the Prime Minister was speaking to the domestic media about vaccine levels, and there was a comparison between Guyana having more vaccines than Trinidad, and the Prime Minister basically had a comment about how, well, I think he was basically those who were in WHO approved vaccines, right? And it caused a bit of a stir with Guyana. All right, fine. I think that to some extent, he wasn't necessarily thinking in the moment, hey, I am the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I can't just go and do any whatever comment because I want to be defensive and argumentative over comparisons of who have how many vaccines. I have to be more diplomatic in my speech because it's not just Trinidad and Tobago that's listening to me. At times, once it's something to do about other people, my words are going to carry enough weight for them to be mad. Not necessarily to influence them, but to get them upset. And I think, generally speaking, the influence that people, that office holders have, including the head of the opposition, right? At the end of the day, it's part of government. It's an official part of government. It's not just the people there that complain about what the majority of parliament does. The majority bench, I should say. They underestimate that their words carry weight, and they can't just say whatever they want, and they can't just fire from the hip and empty the rhetorical matic of their language and their vocabulary and their debating, right? With just full automatic speech, hoping to hit the mark, because all of the misses, to draw the analogy, will have collateral damage for their own position.
I cannot see how, first of all, the opposition actually laying down conditions for a talk. Laying down conditions for a talk. Again, the opposition put forward this suggestion to begin with. This is something that the opposition leader had said. This needs to take place, and we want to be a part of it. The opposition leader said, we are willing to work with the government. I cannot see how the Prime Minister not being a part of the crime talks is counterintuitive. And it's not that I'm trying to be daft or blind to anything, but whilst the Prime Minister is vital in addressing any issue, or at least from the standpoint in regards to TNT as a whole, as a nation, there's a reason why you have ministers in place. There's a reason why you have deputies in place. There's a reason why they hold these positions and these offices. And the Prime Minister being there is not necessarily going to lead to greater accountability. It's not going to lead to greater transparency. So, again, listen, the Prime Minister has made his position clear. The opposition have laid down their conditions for the talks. As far as I'm concerned, put this nonsense aside and find a bloody solution, because at the end of the day, they're getting their salaries at the end of the month. They can afford to have all the fancy security systems.
The last time that they came together to talk was for that.
The last time they came together to talk was to sort out their pension plans. Yes, the last time the opposition and the government came together to talk was to sort out their pension plans. They're getting their salary. They can afford all the fancy security, right? They can afford cameras and electric gates and electric wiring, whatever it is. They say crime doesn't pay. Tell that to all the security businesses in Trinidad that are booming and prospering from this. They need to come together and understand the reality is people in Trinidad and Tobago and people on the ground are suffering and people are living in fear. And this is absolute nonsense that what gets me too is that people are saying, well, the opposition correct and the Prime Minister correct and this is that. No, as far as I'm concerned, they both have their faults, but they can both come together and find an amicable solution. But they don't want to. It's not a matter of not whether or not they could, I don't think they have the intelligence to begin with. I said that previously, but they just don't want to.
All right, well, okay, so first thing, just to respond, I think that what really is disappointing with the government's lineup is I don't understand the tourism minister and the minister of public utilities. At the very least, I would think that the minister of finance, if we want some heavy hitters and decision makers, as well as the minister of planning, that would make sense to me because it's more than just national security. But here's the thing: I said I had a question for you because the earlier.
Sorry, I just want to add to that. I also think that the minister, or at least the minister in the Ministry of Housing, should be present. Because a lot of these videos you see circulating on social media with alleged gang members is where?
Okay. Now I have a question for you. You said earlier you don't think that no politician wants crime to be out of control, right? Despite the fact that politically, of course, it might help the opposition if the government is doing a bad job. But now you've acknowledged the point where, and I think the same thing too, they are not willing to compromise from their respective positions, and that makes it appear very much that they don't want the crime talks to happen, right? They just want to be able to have their arguments to blame the other side. So I have to ask, You said no sane politician. Are politicians sane in this country? Because it seems as though they don't seem to really understand the consequences of playing politics on this issue. And I do wonder if maybe they're not necessarily sane, or the disconnect from the actual average citizen is so great, and we might have to talk about this after the break, but their disconnect is so great that they don't fully understand what's going on. They say they do, they could repeat what's being told to them, but like you said, their salaries are set. They could afford a lifestyle way above into the clouds compared to what the average citizen could afford.
To answer your question, sure, I think politicians are sane. I don't think they're intelligent. I think they're smart. Bear in mind what I'm saying there. Listen carefully to what I know it's hard to analyze. They're smart men and women. They're smart man. They're smart man.
As what the AG said, they're smart men.
But they're not necessarily intelligent. So yes, of course, they have to be seen to be a smart man. They're not necessarily intelligent. Anyway, let's break for news.
Here is the WESN News on the Hour. I am Sira Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Police Complaints Authority report of an increase in complaints. 11 washing machines, 8 stoves, freezers and refrigerators were seized at 2 houses. Internationally, South Korea claims North Korea fired a ballistic missile towards them. Now for the details. The Police Complaints Authority has seen an increase in complaints before the institution. For the period 2014 to 2015, the PCA received 352 complaints from members of the public. This figure moved from 569 for 2021 to 2022. This update was disclosed by PCA Director David West, who appeared before an inquiry into the audited financial statements of the PCA for the financial years 2015 to 2021. Police officers confiscated 11 washing machines, 8 stoves, as well as freezers and refrigerators during a raid on 2 residences in Barataria. The operation, conducted by the Barataria Criminal Investigations Department, followed an investigation into a warehouse breaking and larceny reports spanning from November 1st to 15th. 2 individuals, a 62-year-old man from Pittsburgh, San Juan, and a 56-year-old man from 9th Avenue and 2nd Street, Barataria, are expected to face charges as a result of the seized items. In international news, South Korea says that North Korea has fired a ballistic missile towards the sea, but that the launch likely failed. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said on Thursday the North Korean launch was made from the North's capital region on Wednesday night. It says the North Korean missile was believed to have failed but didn't elaborate. The North Korean missile launch came a day after it launched a spy satellite. North Korea has claimed to have put the satellite into orbit. Well, that's it to News on the Hour on WESN. I am Sira Ali. Thank you for watching.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. The phone lines are now open. Keaton Shah is with me, folks. Hashtag, we have cited Keaton Shah. He is real.
Are you? Oh, I thought you were saluting me there for a second. Sean?
Oh, yes, well, that too. Yeah, it could be all that. And, of course, we were speaking about crime, and Keaton was getting his frustrations off of his stress, and I can't say that I blame him. At the end of the day, you come down to similar conclusions, whether or not via the same path, that it doesn't seem as though either side really wants this to happen, because the excuses could easily be trumped by the need of the moment, the requirements of the moment. And one of the things that I find both upsetting and in an academic sort of way, or a technical sort of way interesting is the most recent case, we were speaking about it off air, the attempted murder-suicide, as you put it, right? Where one of the people killed wasn't even an intended target in a domestic dispute. Well, before we get into that conversation, we have a caller in the line from Port of Spain. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning to you, sir. Okay, I'm going to comment on a statement just made by Mr. Keaton Shah, that the Prime Minister does not need to be present in talks, because it's like when you have ministers, they have their responsibilities. I want to ask Mr. Keaton Shah if there's any minister in this country who can make any major decision without the ratification of the Prime Minister. And that is why he must be at the talks. So if he tries to negate everything, it can be trashed out there and then, and they could come up with solutions to alleviate the crime situation in this country, which really, at the end of the day, if you think about it, does not affect the UNC. Okay? Good morning.
Thank you very much, Golo.
Thank you, Golo.
To answer your question, ministers do have the power and authority to make decisions. Yes, they do. Now, in the context of the conversation that you're asking, overall, if you're talking about legislation or anything else, consultation with the Prime Minister is necessary. It's his job. I still can't see why is it that what comes out from the crime talks could still be relayed to the Prime Minister before anything is fully implemented. If you're making the argument to me that he has to be there because, listen, he's the one at the end of the day is going to say, no, this is not going to work. No, it doesn't happen that way on the spot where he's going to say, no, this can't work and that can't work and whatnot. There is a process in place. So whether or not he is there at the talks or not, I'm sorry, I still don't see the point that you're making.
I think it's a question of procedure, right? High-level talks tend to not be, well, we're going to sort things out now for now, right? In part because the issues are so complex. Before you can make a decision, you're going to want to have to backstop it with like research and checking a lot of technical details. And, you know, you don't just want to make snap judgments on things like this. So even if he was there and he was willing to approve things, on a technical level, I don't know if they would be capable of making certain determinations until, you know, okay, we talk with the opposition and then we go and we check some figures and facts and whatever, and the viability and feasibility.
So,
I mean,
Cole, I understand that the question that you're trying to ask, my opinion, to answer your question, in the context of things, I'm sorry, it's not necessarily going to work that way. Because if we're taking that approach, then why isn't the Prime Minister also with the Minister of Energy in Venezuela for these serious negotiations, which could impact us on an international level as well?
To be fair, I started off with that position, Caller. I had that same position, but then eventually I had to concede the fact that it wasn't necessarily practical or practically necessary. We have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning. Morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, morning, Sean.
Morning.
Hello.
Hi, caller. Could you hear us?
Hi, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, morning. With respect to this crime talk, let me say this firstly. I had a conversation with a friend of mine when this crime talk was when the invitation to the opposition was given by the Prime Minister. And that gentleman told me at the time, he said, let me tell you something. He said they're going to spend their time hemming and hawing how not to have these talks. He said they're going to put up opposition on both sides
why they should not have this crime talks. He said that to me at that time, and I couldn't. I said, you're joking, man. I said, no, I said, this is serious. And so far, it has come to pass.
It has indeed.
And let me say this again. The Prime Minister, you having a crime talks. The Prime Minister initially has to be there. You are the head of the National Security Council and head of the country. I am not saying, Keaton, that after they have the initial talks and then they probably assign portfolios and that type of thing and get a working group, and the Prime Minister and the opposition leader may not have to be involved at that point. But initially, he has to be there. Initially, he has to be there.
All right,
and that is my position on this. Mm-hmm. I totally disagree with you that he doesn't have to be there. He doesn't have to be there throughout. Let me qualify my statement. Throughout, but initially, he has to be there as the head of those two agencies, the country and the National Security Council, and then let the thing roll. But he has to be there to start the wheel moving. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you were suggesting that the Prime Minister needs to be there for an introductory conversation, if you're talking about in the context of, let's say, it's a 5-day conference and he has to be there for the first day, fine, fair enough. But I still don't see why his absence has to be the reason for we're delaying these conversations. Mm-hmm. Cole, I am not necessarily disagreeing with you, though our positions may be different. You have to understand that if you just say, all right, you know what, let me dare to start the conversation, fine. I still don't see why this has to be the reason for delay.
I think the key is right. There's a difference between the opposition delaying the crime talks and we wanting the Prime Minister to be there. I think those aren't necessarily the exact same thing. Caller from St. Anne's, good morning. Morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
My call. I want to make a comment about two things. Sean, you said a little while ago that the crime talks had stalled on the opposition side of things. Because they
technically, yes.
Court, so to speak, when the Prime Minister, or the team rather, asked for names to be, the AG asked for names to be submitted.
Yes, technically,
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think what they did at that point of receiving that communication, if I remember correctly, was before they sent names, they were seeking clarification on certain things, and they sent a response back asking for that clarification, which I am, to date, I'm not sure it has been provided by the government side. That's the first thing. The other thing I want to comment on is the anthem controversy involving Iowa George. Now, I have to consider that to be a concocted controversy, because when I look at Iowa George, he's clearly over the age of 50, and he would have been brought up in a school system that would have taught him respect for our national emblems, including the anthem. So for him to deliberately use the anthem in that way to provoke a fake debate about its appropriate use, I thought was very cynical. And by the way, the Prime Minister said in his comments about this thing, he was taking off his Prime Ministerial hat to make a comment about it. That was the very moment when he should have kept his Prime Ministerial hat on to make a comment about it, because it concerned a national symbol. And by the way, there are instances where anthems have been used by popular musicians before. The Beatles most famously did it in their single All You Need Is Love by using the French anthem as the opening chords of that particular tune, but it didn't attract the level of controversy that this particular thing has done. So the controversy, such as it was, I thought it was manufactured and typical of social media hacks who want to have their time in the sun for a moment of pleasure at everybody else's expense. That's my comment.
Thank you very much, Cola, for your contribution. I mean, you're right. Iowa George did receive public relations from this, good or bad. He is the talk of the town.
I mean, so I heard it, right? I heard the use of the anthem in the song. And on an artistic level, I found it to be very lazy. Let's just slap the anthem in front, which, ironically, I think does give credence to St. Anne's theory. If it was a serious attempt at using the anthem, it's a poor one. You could have better invoked the anthem in a much more artistic way than just slapping it in front and singing it in full and then start your song. No more. I'll leave that there. I understand what you said. I don't think the opposition's reasons wanting clarification. At the end of the day, the government said what they said. They didn't stutter, they didn't stumble. I don't necessarily think it's reasonable to say we need to wait for clarification, and because of that, we're going to not put forward our names. We could continue on with the process while asking for clarification. Caller from El Socorro. Good morning, caller.
We waited too long to take that call.
Sorry.
Caller from El Socorro, we sincerely apologize. We know that you were in the background waiting. Please call in now to join the conversation and share your thoughts and opinions with us. We sincerely apologize. Good morning, caller from Manzanillo.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Morning, yes?
This is the talking point?
Yes. You're on there.
Sitan Shah and Sean Michael Paul?
Yes.
That's correct.
I was watching something on... Hello, morning.
Hi, good morning, caller. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was calling for it.
Don't listen to the TV, caller. Caller, don't listen to the TV.
Don't listen to the TV?
Listen to your phone.
Yeah, listen through your phone.
All right, I'll stop the TV. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was watching something about the Prime Minister going to Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, caller.
Yeah, but I thought he went to Saudi Arabia to talk about crime. Because after I was reading the paper, when they say Saudi Arabia does have little or no crime at all. The punishment for crime in Saudi Arabia is so severe that people afraid to do crime.
Okay.
So I say exactly what to talk about.
All right, caller. Well, all right, caller. Well, thank you very much. He went for the Saudi Arabia Caribbean, not the Middle East Caribbean Conference. The exact title of the conference that we're in right now, I'll get it for you in a moment. So he wasn't the only leader from a Caribbean nation to be there.
I don't think our courts, much less our final Court of Appeal, the Privy Council, will go with Saudi Arabian style or severity of criminal justice punishments. We do have a call on the line from Shagonas. Good morning, caller. You're on here. Already? We just got a call.
I don't know what's going on with the phone lines. That's all right.
Call if you can hear us. Call back in. I don't want to say what I don't know what to say with that one, but
the Saudi Arabia CARICOM summit, by the way.
Okay, we have Stan Fan on the back. Good morning, caller. You on here? Hello. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Okay.
Yes, caller. Would you like to make your point?
You're coming in very faint, but if you're hearing me, listen to this. It with whether the opposition the big smoke screen politics will be arguing every day. I don't doubt that never happen. The crime in this country is particularly the opposition and the PNN. Or they understand that yet. So they will never have no clock. Because fingers got point on both sides. And we all know that nobody is taking no action. Anybody ever get locked up in white-collar crime in this country? No. Right? Hello?
Yes, caller. Thank you very much. You were breaking up, but I think we got the gist of your message. Thank you for your contribution. All right, we have a caller on the line with us from Shagonas. Good morning, caller.
Hello, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
I explained to you what was wrong with the time talk earlier in the week. The absence of an independent public service on the matter. Sean commented by the public service wasn't sure it was being independent. And I totally agree with you. And that is because of improper manipulation by the cabinet. In that public servants are supposed to be employed through the public service commission. They are filling all the posts now with temporary and contract, which are at the behest of cabinet. And that is the problem. Any questions, gentlemen?
None on my end.
Of course.
Yes, none on my end. But thank you very much for reiterating your point, because I wasn't here early in the week, so thanks a lot.
Yes, you went to.
Yes,
But
thank
he
you.
said today, folks. He said today.
Yes,
Hashtag he's real.
Yes. All right, we just have about 9 more minutes for phone calls this morning. You can call and join the conversation, share your thoughts and opinions with us in regards to. Well, our topic this morning really focused on the stalled crime talks, and as I said, that's really taking a lot of the news away from the actual reality on the ground. But if there's anything else that you'd like to contribute to in regards to what's happening here in TNT, please feel free to do so. You have the opportunity now. We apologize for whatever is taking place with the phone lines. I don't know if it's on our end.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
something that's happening across TNT right now. But hopefully it's not a continuous thing.
Yeah, we can't tend to hear your callers, so if anything, feel free to speak. If we can't hear you, well then, and the call disconnects, it'll be because of that. We have a caller from Diego Martin. Good morning. You on here?
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, I just want to make a quick comment. I think the Prime Minister has forgotten what he said when he was opposition. He said a government who cannot secure its citizens has no right to be governing a country. He said that, and that is why I think he should be part of the crime talks. And I think his problem is with Gary Griffith, really. And Gary Griffith made a very salient point. He said that the injunction he has is not reporting a report in the Parliament, not outside the Parliament. So whatever he said, he could come out of Parliament and say whatever was in the report. But he knows full well probably those things are not true. So I don't see his problem with not going and joining the conversation with the opposition leader. It's for the benefit of the country, and they are both supposed to get there, the both of them. Because whether they have the experience or not, that doesn't matter. They are the head of the both sides of the parties. And they need to show the people that they are willing to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they should make a good effort to try and do that, and at least appease the minds of the people. Thank you, gentlemen, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, caller, for your contribution.
Thank you, caller.
So,
good hearing from you again.
Yes, very good hearing from you, actually. To respond to what you were suggesting, as I mentioned earlier, I do not see any reason why Gary Griffith should not be a part of the conversations. He is he's a leader of a political party.
He's a former
He's a
parliamentarian.
former Minister of National Security. He's a former Commissioner of Police. And again, there are accusations again, there are legal cases against him, but he is still out because he has not been found guilty of anything. I am of the opinion that the Prime Minister needs to put aside if that be the case, his personal things against Gary Griffith, those personal feelings against Gary Griffith aside in the context of a national issue. Now, what you're seeing in regards to the Prime Minister, as I've said that it's no harm in Gary Griffith being a part of it, there's no harm in the Prime Minister being a part of it, not at all. But I still am standing strong in my opinion that it should not be the reason why these talks are delayed.
I think also the Prime Minister want to undermine future arguments when the Gary Griffith situation further unfolds, if it does, and allegations against him come to the forefront. We have a caller on the line from Mova, I believe. Mova, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You're on here.
I'd like to join the conversation with WSN.
Yes, you're live. Go ahead, caller.
All right. I'm calling from Mova. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Listening?
Listening.
You're listening?
Yes.
All right. I'm calling from Mova. Now, I like to bring to mind on many times when the Prime Minister said that he wants to do nothing, say nothing, and meet the opposition leader on many occasions. If these people who is on the media, on the radio, could go back in the archives, on many occasions when they have the political meetings down in the west or in the Port of Spain area, go back to those archives, right? Mm-hmm. And you will recall when on many occasions he used that remarks. And if the commentators on the televisions and the radios want to know the truth, why you don't want to be the political leader of your position, go back to that and you're going to understand what was really going on. He do not care about the people of this country. He do not care about the country on the whole. I believe he's suffering some kind of malnutrition in his brain, or some rocks in his brain, or some cancer in his brain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kola, for your contribution. And yet, still, he is the Prime Minister. And I don't mean that in a way, I'm not making an excuse for him.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that there is this opinion that seems to be very far and very popular. Our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, doesn't care for Transvago and doesn't even care about the people of Transvago. And at times I actually wonder whether or not that is the case. Because I see things, I hear things myself, and I'm like, you know, really, this is nonsensical, this is stupid, this is what's going on here. It seems as though many people in power do not care about Transvago and long-term development for Transvago. Let's just patch the situation right now. Let's hand out 200 houses. Let's go pave this road, and then we're good. And then some or the other, we forget these things in an election. How is he voting in again?
That's why I said I do wonder if there's a disconnect, because the people who they interact with, yeah, they will listen to them, but those problems and the problems of the man in the street, that's two different things. Right? So there's a disconnect there. The other thing is they're incentivized in some respects to act the way they act, to give out the houses and the grants and the short-term things and to neglect the long-term, because that's how the voters vote. So I can understand some of the behavior.
Fault of a two-party system and a two-party mindset. Where
I mean, multiple parties have their own faults. I think it's the voters not being engaged enough.
No, but it's not that, because at the end of the day, their options to them in their mind was either Kamala or Rowley. So who am I going to vote for? And this is what I'm saying. Final caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Keegan.
Good morning.
You see, we have no one in authorities who had to put fear into these criminals. They want to put in fear into them, the criminals put in fear into other citizens. Look, for instance, that these chief police in San Fernando were trying to arrest a man. The mob was them. When the backup squad reached, they put the man into the vehicle, the man still escaped. Look over these police need training too. When I training like in martial arts, like judo and these things. 3 big policemen, one little small man about 140 pounds. You can't handcuff him and put him in the vehicle. But the mob was in their face too. You understand? They can't use the pepper spray properly. You need training.
Yeah.
That might take on crime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, you're right. 3 police officers trying to detain that man. But you pointed out something which infuriates me. You see these people who videotape when they want to videotape, and they shout, "Oh, they're wicked! He never do nothing." That's like I don't know if it's the same lady or the same person always standing behind the camera at all these scenes throughout Transvago filming. I don't know. Because as always, how are they doing that? He never do nothing. Look at police advantages. People let the police conduct their operations and duties. It go be much simpler and much easier. Once he's detained and you've taken him to the station, all that processing, it'll be a lot easier then. But you see people in Trinidad, we spoke about the opposition and the Prime Minister this morning, but a lot of people in Trinidad, they know people who are doing wrong. They see what is going on wrong. But we protect these people. And I mean, why?
Some of it is when you see what goes at the top or what you perceive to be corruption at the top. You know, it's kind of hard to say, I am going to now come with my low income, low economic rung of the ladder in society self. And I'm going to do all the right things and not try to find shortcuts. Meanwhile, you know, a significant amount of the population, I will hazard a guess, thinks that politicians are made up of people who took all the shortcuts they could find, cut through all the red tape with the less than reputable means, let's just put it that way, right? And make no qualms about trying to get advantages in life, whether it's ethical or unethical. Might still be legal, maybe it's not. But I think the whole thing about what the last caller said with regards to they need some training, I am wondering, you know, I have heard that police officers do have degrees. Now, I don't know if it's all the rank and file and new recruits, My question is this, with regards to the national security apparatus in general, the quality of individuals we have there. Did you see the story yesterday where a soldier robbed a family in Mayaro, and he was assigned to the Mayaro police station to do joint task force patrols? So when they came to report the robbery, they said, that's the guy there, look at him, in the uniform, in the station, that's one of the robbers. And I'm just like, that's a whole next level of dumb. I'm going to rob people in the district I'm supposed to be patrolling, and then I'm going to report to work afterwards. That's a whole next level of foolishness. If these circumstances are proven to be true.
Now, just bear in mind, though, yes, you're absolutely right. But they have some people with PhDs or that can't put two sentences together, Sean.
That is true.
There are people who...
Did you see there was something famous on the internet where they did like an IQ comparison thing? And the most educated person ended up being the bottom of the actual IQ testing. She had the lowest score. She was the most educated.
You could have
one of the.
You could have a degree and still be absolutely clueless. But whatever, it doesn't matter. That's the end of the show. It's been a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you're so ready to run us.
No, but I thank all the callers for their thoughts and opinions this morning. It's been good to hear from them. I'm still of the opinion that the Prime Minister's absence should not be the reason why these crime talks have stalled. The Prime Minister not being a part of these crime talks should not be the reason why they're not going ahead. I believe that the situation is now beyond critical where it has to happen. And as far as I can see, the Minister of National Security and the Attorney General being there, you questioned whether or not there's a need for the Minister of Public Utilities or the Minister of, who's the other one? Tourism to be there. Yeah, I would say that even, you could remove the Minister of Tourism, definitely the Minister of Housing, because we see what's taking place there as well, needs to be a part of it. So, I hear what all the callers are saying, but you see, my position is, given how critical the state of affairs are in TNT right now, there cannot be any further delays. The Prime Minister is not going to budge, the opposition is not going to budge. So the possibility of these crime talks ever happening, well, that's rather slim this morning.
Rather slim. I will say this, I will agree with the caller in the sense that the Prime Minister, depending on the statements he made, or was it you that made the statements? Depending on the statements he made about crime and not being able to protect the people, right? Yes, with that statement, I do think that it would be politically important for him to be seen centered to the situation, not necessarily throughout, but involved. And that's why the opposition wanting him to be there, and to me the population wanting him to be there, I think are two different things. And I'll quick aside with the population wanting him to be involved. But as Keaton said, the crime talks can move ahead, you know, and you can make the case, hey, listen, we're moving ahead with this, but it would be best for you to be involved. If I was the leader of the opposition, that's the case I would make it. Not, are you going to be involved? I want clarification if you're going to be involved or not, despite the fact that you have said that you're not going to be involved, despite the fact that you're not including the listeners. I need clarification on that, and we're not moving forward until we get that. That is not the right way to express how important you think this issue is. This is not, the moderate waits on no one. Case in point, just look at the news for the last however many days, months, weeks, years. It waits on no one. So, people are dying.
And the opposition can simply come out afterwards and say, we made our recommendations, we put everything on the table, and we will be communicating such to the Prime Minister.
When criminals have automatic rifles and are willing to use 50 rounds or more to kill an individual target, I'm not sure a handgun is going to save me in that situation, especially if I'm on the road in my car, those bullets will go right through my car.
Well, as proven from Sunday, it doesn't have to be an individual even with a criminal history or criminal record.
Exactly.
Or an individual that is known to the police. Could be anybody.
All right, Keaton, time for our show.
Good seeing you, Sean.
Folks, should I say it? I'll say it then.
Yeah, you can't say it. It's copyright now.
Oh, okay. No. I use fair use laws, right?
Today's a good day to have a good day.
As my co-host always said. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.